Welcome to World News. Tonight, a high-ranking White House official found guilty of lying in the investigation of who leaked a CIA agent's name, a case that leads to the highest levels of government. Insult and injury. President Bush names 2 high-profile leaders to fix the failing veterans' health care system. Tonight, thousands of vets tell Bob Woodruff their stories. Dangerous debt, the ugly side of America's housing boom, forcing families out of homes and threatening to drag down the economy. And family honor, the growing popularity of purity proms, where young women promise their fathers they'll remain virgins until marriage.
From ABC News headquarters, this is World News with Charles Gibson. Reporting tonight, Elizabeth Vargas.
Good evening. A man who was once in the Bush administration's circle of most trusted advisors is tonight a convicted felon. A jury found Vice President Cheney's former Chief of Staff, Louis Scooter Libby, guilty of 4 counts of obstruction of justice, making false statements and perjury. It happened during the investigation into who leaked the name of an undercover CIA officer whose husband was an outspoken critic of the president's case for war in Iraq. The trial has shed new light on how the administration dealt with tough questions about the war when it became apparent Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction. ABC's Pierre Thomas was in the courtroom today.
Scooter Libby was stone-faced as the verdict was read, but his wife was visibly shaken, fighting back tears as each guilty count was announced.
We are very disappointed in the verdict of the jurors. He is totally innocent. Totally innocent.
Vice President Cheney released a statement saying he was very disappointed with the verdict and that he was saddened for Scooter and his family. But the jury believed the prosecution's argument that Libby lied to cover up a campaign by the Vice President's office to discredit a critic of the administration's Iraq war policy.
It's sad that we had a situation where a high-level official, a person who worked in the office of Vice President, obstructed justice and lied under oath.
At its heart, the prosecution said, the Libby trial was about a vice president and his staff obsessed with pushing back against critics. Back in 2003, Vice President Cheney was apparently furious about an opinion article written by Ambassador Joe Wilson that challenged the case for war. The vice president was concerned enough to cut the Wilson article out of the newspaper and make notes on it. Within 8 days of the article's publication, Wilson's wife, Valerie Plame, had been outed as a CIA operative in a column by Robert Novak. The prosecution said Libby lied to impede their investigation into who leaked Plame's identity. Today, at least one of the jurors said Libby was not the only one involved.
He was the fall guy. He was tasked by the vice president to go and talk to reporters.
Throughout the trial, Prosecutor Fitzgerald used Libby's recorded grand jury testimony to detail the vice president's fixation with Wilson's charge. Mr. Cheney even micromanaged the media response to Wilson.
Vice President dictated to me what he wanted me to say to the press.
Mr. Cheney also asked President Bush to release the details of the highly classified National Intelligence Estimate, or NIE, to select reporters without informing the Defense Secretary, CIA Director, or the National Security Advisor. Ultimately, no one was ever charged with leaking Ms. Plame's identity, something not lost on at least one of the jurors today.
There was a tremendous amount of sympathy for Mr. Libby on the jury. It was said a number of times, what are we doing with this guy here? Where's Rove? where are these other guys?
Libby's defense attorneys say any false statements were due to a bad memory. They plan to appeal. But if this conviction stands, Libby faces up to 25 years in prison. Elizabeth?
All right, Pierre Thomas, thank you. And our chief Washington correspondent, George Stephanopoulos, joins us. The vice president, as Pierre reported, said he was disappointed in the verdict today. We had a very different statement from the president.
Oh, definitely. The president's staff came out and said he respected the jury's verdict, even though he was saddened by it. And it is really unusual, Elizabeth, for someone like the vice president to actually criticize a jury's verdict, but a senior White House official told me they recognized the vice president was very close to Scooter Libby, and he felt strongly about it.
There's already debate, meantime, about whether or not there will be a presidential pardon of Scooter Libby. What are the chances of that? Democrats are today calling on the president to promise not to pardon him.
They're calling on him to pledge not to pardon him, but Scooter Libby's allies are already saying the president should pardon him and should do it fast. The White House is just not going to talk about this, Elizabeth. They're not going to touch it, but they're not going to rule out a pardon down the road.
In the meantime, Democrats are also calling on the president to, quote, do something in light of today's guilty verdict. Ambassador Joe Wilson, who wrote the editorial that started this whole thing, said today he wants Karl Rove fired from the White House. Do you think that might happen?
No, it ain't going to happen. The White House is going to try to hold the line. They're going to try to hold the line on not commenting about this at all, but the Democrats will keep up the pressure. Meantime, though, they know they can't do much about it, so they're going to also continue to use their oversight power on this scandal at Walter Reed and the problems with wounded vets throughout the veteran system.
But is the verdict and the reactions today another sign of a schism between the president and the vice president?
It sure is. It does show a little daylight between them, but a White House official told me there are absolutely no plans at all for the vice president to leave.
All right, George Stephanopoulos, thanks so much. Now to the crisis of care facing America's war wounded. President Bush today announced former Senator Bob Dole, a wounded veteran of World War II, and former Secretary of Health and Human Services Donna Shalala will both head up the investigation of the problems at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. The president says the nation has, quote, a moral obligation to make sure injured troops get better treatment.
Some of our troops at Walter Reed have experienced bureaucratic delays and living conditions that are less than they deserve. It's unacceptable to me, it's unacceptable to you, it's unacceptable to our country, and it's not going to continue.
The commission will examine conditions at veterans hospitals and military bases around the country. Bob Woodruff has spent months meeting with wounded veterans and their families. He uncovered the critical conditions facing so many injured troops after they return from the battlefield. And he joins me now. Good to see you.
Elizabeth, it's great to be back here with you. And we've been so busy for the last couple of weeks about what we've been reporting on so many of these injured soldiers and Marines. In fact, we've got thousands of emails from many of their families about what's happened to them and how they've been served, and we're still sifting through them. But what's remarkable is almost all of them agree how badly the smaller VAs around the country are dealing with the injured. A persistent problem for so many injured vets, one they cited time and again in their emails, is the bureaucracy in the VA system. I'm a disabled veteran who has experienced so many questionable decisions made by the VA, wrote one viewer, that I refuse to go to any veterans hospitals. Marine Corporal Yuri Zamisli sustained a brain injury from complications during surgery. But when he went home to Illinois, his local VA wasn't well equipped to handle his recovery. The people are great, his wife Amy told us, but the system is horrible. The VA made us feel so horrible, and we had no guidance to where to go or how to get anything done. Tens of thousands of soldiers and Marines injured in Iraq and Afghanistan have come through the system. Many of them describe their initial care as first-rate, life-saving. It's after that, they say, the problems begin.
How are you, bro? Look at you.
We first met Sergeant Michael Boothby in Bethesda Naval Medical Center. He had suffered dramatic brain injury after his convoy was attacked by a roadside bomb in Iraq. Sergeant Boothby was making excellent progress at a specialized VA facility, but once he returned to Texas, he began to regress.
Well, when we first got here, it was our understanding we were supposed to start therapy with the outpatient program, but there was nothing. Nothing was set up.
Many say the problems with the VA have remained under our collective radar for years.
That's what's got me stirred up, because I thought this was all fixed in the 70s and the 80s.
Russ Kakamasi was wounded in Vietnam. He says he was lucky. He had good health care from his job, but he told us he is outraged that nothing has changed.
It's absolutely, positively inexcusable, and it has to be fixed.
VA doctors we talked to say that at the beginning of the war, the VA did not predict the new types of injuries it would have to treat, and even the best in the VA were overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of injured soldiers and Marines. And Elizabeth, I have to say right now, that has to begin to change.
Indeed. All right, Bob, thanks so much. In Iraq, we learned today that 9 American troops were killed in 2 bombings north of Baghdad yesterday, making it the deadliest day for U.S. troops there in a month. And this has been a day of extraordinary sectarian violence in Iraq. At least 149 people were killed in a string of bombings targeting Shiite pilgrims. The worst attack, a double bombing in Hilla, turned a solemn procession on the road to Karbala into a panicked stampede. But even with today's attack, some people in Iraq say they have begun to feel more secure. Here's ABC's Baghdad correspondent Terry McCarthy.
Death in the name of religion. 2 suicide bombers mingled with Shiite pilgrims on their way to a religious festival south of Baghdad today. As the crowd stopped in a tent on the way, the men detonated their explosive vests. Iraqi officials say Sunni insurgents are systematically targeting Shiite pilgrims ahead of Friday's festival in the holy Shia city of Karbala. There have been at least 12 other attacks on pilgrims traveling to Karbala. Despite today's deadly attacks outside Baghdad, many people we speak to inside the city tell us they do sense things have started to change since the U.S. surge began. Commerce is making a comeback. Markets are more crowded, some stores that had closed have reopened, and death squad killings are down. We still see some militias, says this man, but I think their activities have decreased. For U.S. troops, this has been a pleasant surprise. In the past 3 days, some 600 American soldiers have pushed into Sadr City, a densely packed district of eastern Baghdad controlled by radical Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. Last time they did this, in 2004, they fought pitched battles with Sadr's militia. So far this time, they have met no resistance at all.
If there's one thing that jumped out at me, with this being the edge of Sadr City, it's been how well we've been received by the people, how friendly of a reception we've gotten.
The main reason appears to be that for now the militias have melted away rather than confront the well-armed Americans. Iraq is still fighting a sectarian war. The U.S. surge may have changed the terms of engagement in Baghdad for the time being. It remains to be seen whether it has changed the direction of the war. Terry McCarthy, ABC News, Baghdad.
One more item overseas. 2 strong earthquakes jolted the Indonesian island of Sumatra. At least 70 people were killed and hundreds injured. The quakes measuring 6.3 and 6.1 flattened buildings. The earthquakes and their aftershocks caused panic and traffic jams as people ran to higher ground. Still ahead, the popular new parties called purity balls. Girls making vows of abstinence to their fathers. Will it reduce premarital sex? We'll take a closer look. The Federal Reserve Chairman calls for tighter mortgage regulations, why so many Americans are on the brink of losing their homes. And the know-it-all website that doesn't seem so smart today. What happened when a dropout posed as a PhD?
This is World News with Charles Gibson. Brought to you by Ameriprise Financial.
Your dreams are crazy. They're impossible. That's what they said back in the day when your dreams changed everything. That's not going to stop now. You don't turn your dreams over to the authorities at age 60. You find someone who believes in your dreams.
Start with your dreams, and your Ameriprise financial advisor, working with you one-to-one, face-to-face, will help you plan to make your dreams realities.
See, the thing about dreams is they don't retire.
We had a health concern. Turned out to be nothing, but it got us doing more to protect our health, like taking silver.
Centrum Silver age-adjusted multivitamins have key antioxidants that help support natural cell repair.
Our health protection starts with silver.
Healthy Choice gave us a challenge.
To make their meals even more flavorful.
By creating wine sauce.
And using spices.
We've added flavor to taste.
Delicious and healthy.
Healthy Choice. It's all about the choices we make.
All it takes is your signature. During the Mercury Signature event, there's no cash due at signing on any 07 Mercury. Like the Mercury Milan, a Consumer's Digest Best Buy. That 0 first month's payment, 0 down, and 0 cash due at signing on Mercury Milan for $256 a month. Only at your Lincoln Mercury dealer.
Spend less time lying awake with annoying aches and pains and more time asleep when you switch from Tylenol PM to Advil PM. Advil PM. Less time lying awake, more time asleep.
Denny's works for me because I'm in love with their French toast. That's okay, right?
It's perfectly normal. Denny's new Mega French Toast Slam. One of 3 mega breakfasts, just $5.99. Denny's.
Works for me. In the future, everyone will protect their eyes from sun damage like they protect their skin. Transitions lenses. They automatically adjust to changing light and block harmful UV rays and glare. So don't wait until tomorrow. The danger is here today, and so is the protection. Ask your eye care professional about Transitions. Transitions lenses are approved by the American Optometric Association.
We're going to take a closer look at an intriguing development in the culture wars, a new ritual aimed at encouraging girls and young women to abstain from sex until marriage. It's on the cutting edge of a grassroots Christian movement that began promoting abstinence several years ago with funding from the federal government. Here's ABC's Gigi Stone.
The Markle sisters are primping for a big Friday night dance. But for these girls, there's one important difference. Their date is their father. And the big dance, it's called a purity ball. It has all the hallmarks of a wedding, a white cake, vows exchanged, even a first dance. But instead of fathers giving away their daughter's hand, they're holding on tight.
In today's day and age, if daughters are sexually active before they're married, that ceremony really is meaningless because the father's not giving anybody away.
Tonight, the girls make a solemn pledge to their father.
I'm going to stay pure until I'm married, and I'm not going to date or kiss a boy or anything until I'm married.
Their father says he knows the kind of boy he's protecting them from.
I was probably one of the worst of the guys who didn't respect the girl. I was after whatever I could get to please me.
Purity balls like this one are growing in popularity. Dozens were held last year.
During the current Bush administration, annual funding for abstinence initiatives has more than doubled to around $200 million. In fact, some of these purity balls are paid for, partly with federal funding.
But critics warn if these girls are only learning abstinence, they're not being taught important information about STDs and condoms.
I could see it winding up in more teenage pregnancies and that type of thing because they don't know everything that they need to know.
One thing studies have shown, nearly 90% of those who make an abstinence pledge break it. Brittany Basor admits it might be tough.
Some of the boys joke around with it. They say that it won't work and stuff like that because they think I'm going to get drunk at a party sometime and have sex with the first guy I meet.
The fathers we spoke with discount the studies. They think their relationships with their daughters will help them stay strong. Gigi Stone, ABC News, South Dakota.
Our closer look for today. When we return, the dream homes turning into nightmares for families who took out mortgages that seemed too good to be true.
Are you like me? I have high blood pressure and I have high cholesterol. Sometimes problems come in twos, but sometimes help can come in one. Catawit. Catawit contains the leading branded blood pressure medicine Norvasc and Lipitor, the leading branded cholesterol medicine combined in one pill, Catawit. Catawit is one of many treatment options I discussed with my doctor. Ask your doctor if Catawit's right for you. Along with diet and exercise, one pill doing two jobs for me. My doctor said Catawit's not for everyone. It's not for people with liver problems and women who are nursing, pregnant, or may become pregnant. To check for liver problems, you need simple blood tests. Tell your doctor about any heart problems and all other medications you are taking, or if you experience muscle pain or weakness, as they may be a sign of a rare but serious side effect. For blood pressure and cholesterol lowering benefits, it's Catawit. One pill, two medicines. Makes sense to you, makes sense to me. Ask your doctor if Catawit's right for you.
This Grape Nuts Trail Mix Crunch is unbelievable. Raisins, almonds, some honey. It's delicious.
Whoa! Unbelievable.
Grape Nuts Trail Mix Crunch. It's a different kind of grape nut.
When I was about 12, 13, my mom was diagnosed with diabetes. It was a big blow to the family. You know, seeing her suffering, the physical changes and the emotional changes really bothered me a lot. So I think of that when I'm helping patients. Listening, understanding, putting yourself in that person's shoes is a big part of my day. And I really appreciate that. I get a lot out of that. My name is Mark Moore, and I'm a CVS pharmacist.
Finally released from the Disney Vault.
All it takes is just a little pixie dust.
Walt Disney's magical classic that taught us to believe.
I'll get you for this, man.
Brilliantly restored.
Amazing.
Peter Pan on 2-disc DVD today for a limited time only.
Do something!
Ask about it at work.
Everyone wants to protect their children from sex offenders. This community says it's found the way.
We're not playing God. We're just providing a safer environment.
And the houses are selling like hotcakes. What's the secret, and is it working? Tomorrow, see why more and more Americans are watching World News with Charles Gibson.
It was a strong day on Wall Street as U.S. stocks followed overseas markets in rebounding from nearly a week of steep declines. The Dow shot up more than 150 points, recovering about a quarter of its recent losses, and the Nasdaq gained 44 points, almost 2%. The chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, urged Congress today to tighten regulations on the giant mortgage companies Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Defaults on mortgages have increased as housing prices have weakened, trapping homeowners who took advantage of risky loans. Here's ABC's David Muir.
Colorado retiree Mary Lou Foley and her husband look over the adjustable rate mortgage that was once their saving grace. It is now their worst nightmare.
I've been packing because I'm waiting any minute to get the bad news.
Mrs. Foley believes they will soon lose their home. They refinanced to free up money for medical bills. Mr. Foley has early Alzheimer's. The couple was sold on the promise of paying just 2% interest, but it soon began to jump. Their $1,700 monthly payment doubled.
This is the most devastating thing that has ever happened to me.
The Foleys are among the millions of homeowners who took advantage of adjustable rate mortgages with low interest rates. Others turned to subprime mortgages, as they're called, that overlooked bad credit. They all help fuel the housing market, but the risks are now being realized.
Giving these people the loans without really giving them the education was a little bit like giving somebody a loaded gun without the training.
Borrowers in 2005 and 2006 are defaulting more than 2 times the rate of those who borrowed in the 2 years prior.
It's almost a perfect storm if you're a homeowner who's in distress right now, because you're seeing housing values go down in parts of the country, so the house might not be worth what you paid for it.
These riskier mortgages are now under the eye of federal regulators who are proposing stricter guidelines for banks. Experts say lenders are now scrambling to police themselves before somebody else does. Raising the bar might prevent future foreclosures, but what about families like the Foleys?
To end up in a situation like ours in our old age, to be thrown out, it's just a travesty.
Experts say it's a scenario that will likely repeat itself for months to come. David Muir, ABC News, New York.
If you have one of these loans or you're thinking about getting one to finance a new home purchase, you can get some tips at our website at abcnews.com. And when we come back, tough questions for Wikipedia. More than 1 billion entries, but how many can you trust?
That ought to do it.
Assuming you've done enough for retirement doesn't make much sense either. That's why you should invest with Edward Jones to make sure you're on the right track. Because 2 out of 3 Americans are unprepared for retirement. Don't be one of them. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Oh, what a perfect day. Oh no, nasal allergy congestion strikes again. It's everywhere, outside and in. Prescription Nasonex helps relieve congestion and other nasal allergy symptoms. Maybe that's why 6 million people used Nasonex last year.
Side effects were generally mild and included headache, viral infection, sore throat, nosebleeds, and coughing.
For congestion and other nasal allergy symptoms, ask your doctor about Nasonex.
Lower sodium stuff put you in the land of bland.
Hey, how are you? Wow.
Campbell's announces flavorful new soups with lower sodium natural sea salt.
This is,
Soup.
wow.
When you're constipated, stimulant laxatives can cause cramps, and cramps can give you a bad day. Next time, take Phillips caplets. They don't have harsh stimulants, so you get gentle relief without cramps. Relief feels better with Phillips caplets.
10 years ago, I was in New York performing and I collapsed on stage.
Patti LaBelle has diabetes.
I had no idea. My blood glucose level was 500. Food was the enemy back then.
One Touch Ultra 2 with before and after meal averages can help you see how food affects your blood sugar. Learn how by calling 1-877-311-2311 and you'll receive this free educational DVD.
I can enjoy food again.
One Touch changes everything.
We need space.
The view's amazing. But we'd like something with a little atmosphere.
Find your perfect place at RE/MAX.com. RE/MAX.com shows you all the listings in thousands of cities and towns. See all the listings. Visit RE/MAX.com today.
Great comedy.
You look like one of the village people.
Plus great drama.
We talk about honoring the troops. How about we honor them by giving a damn when they're killed?
Equals great television. Emmy-winning Boston Legal. Tonight, 10/9 Central, only on ABC.
Are hidden credit card fees making you nuts? Sky-high interest rates bankrupting you? Tomorrow, Washington takes on the credit card companies and the penalties that can keep you paying big. So what are you really paying for? Tomorrow, what credit card companies don't want you to know on Good Morning America.
Finally tonight, a matter of trust online. Wikipedia is one of the most popular websites today with information on almost any subject just a click away. But a recent case of a Wikipedia contributor lying about his credentials is raising doubts about its accuracy. Here's ABC's Dan Harris.
Wikipedia is an online encyclopedia that anyone, you, me, my 87-year-old grandfather, or my 5-year-old nephew, can edit.
It is, quite frankly, a revolution of information.
Wikipedia says it minimizes misinformation with an army of volunteers who scour the site. One of its most active volunteers, an anonymous contributor named SJ, claimed to be a tenured professor of theology at a private university. SJ edited some 16,000 entries, at one point defending a book called Catholicism for Dummies, saying, "I would hang my own PhD on its credibility." Problem is, SJ doesn't have a PhD. He is a 24-year-old college dropout from Kentucky.
Critics say this episode highlights the central problem with Wikipedia. It is convenient and vast, with 25 times more entries than the Encyclopedia Britannica, but it's not always accurate.
Some college professors, including Bob Thompson, now ban students from using Wikipedia to research their papers.
I like the idea of this democratization that the internet has made possible. I don't know, though, that I want to democratize my encyclopedia any more than I want to democratize surgery.
Wikipedia has millions of contributors in many languages. The actions of one specific individual shouldn't hinder the rest of us.
But perhaps someone should have realized sooner that SJ probably wasn't a tenured theology professor. Not only was he editing articles on the Roman Catholic Church and the Eucharist, but also on Justin Timberlake and Star Wars. Dan Harris, ABC News, New York.
That makes sense. That's World News Tonight for this Tuesday. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. For Charles Gibson and all of us at ABC News, good night.
He may be the ultimate outsider.
When people think about the second coming of Christ, they don't think of a guy in a pink shirt walking down the street.
He inspires believers and outrage.
That bothers some people that you would say, "I'm Jesus."
Yes. Who is Jesus of Suburbia? The Outsiders, tonight at 9.